My name is John Ross with Finance on a Budget. In this video, I will be talking about what dividend stocks are, why you should invest in them, and what are the best strategies for beginners. If you have the right companies in your portfolio, you can make money for doing absolutely nothing. That sounds like a good deal to me. By the end of this video, I will explain how you can make an extra $1,000 a month using dividend stocks. It's true, because unlike gambling on individual stocks, I will show you the right kind of stocks to invest in that will give you all of that passive income. It's quite amazing. So please give this video a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. What are stock dividends and why should you invest in them? Dividend stocks are from companies that pay out free money to shareholders. Dividend stocks are usually from well-established companies with a track record of distributing earnings back to the shareholders. It's simply a bonus for everyone who invested in the company. This may sound strange at first, but think about it. Shareholders are invested in a company, so they're part owners. As such, they deserve a share in the profits. Basically, established companies like McDonald's don't need to constantly innovate like tech companies, growth stocks, so you can pass on the excess profits to the shareholders. Because of recurring dividend payments and capital appreciation, investing in stocks that pay dividends can effectively help you generate extra income or save up long-term wealth for your future. As long as you have a diversified portfolio of dividend stocks, you can still get pretty stable payouts despite an undesirable economic environment like this crazy pandemic. Growth stocks use earnings to reinvest and grow a business, while value stocks opt to pay out dividends more often because of a possible dominant position in the market. Companies that pay dividends may have reached a plateau in growth, so distributing wealth to shareholders is the most efficient use of capital instead of reinvesting it. Sectors that pay dividends normally fall under utilities, energy, telecommunications, consumer staples, and real estate. When are stock dividends paid? The process begins with a declaration date, which is when the board of directors discusses their intentions to pay the dividends. There is also an ex-dividend date, which is when the shares trade without the right to receive the next dividend. It simply ensures that you own the stock long enough to qualify for the dividend. Otherwise, people would buy the stock in the morning and then sell it in the afternoon. Obviously, this would be bad for the stock prices. So if you were to buy on this ex-div date, you would not qualify for the next dividend payout, but would qualify for any future dividends should you decide to hold on to the share until the next round of payments. Lastly comes the actual date everyone's looking forward to, the pay date. This generally happens 4 times a year for each of the 4 quarters, but sometimes it could happen monthly, annually, or semi-annually. What are the factors to consider in buying dividend stocks? You should be aware of the payout ratio, which is based on a percentage of the company's earnings. Normally, a dividend will be more sustainable if it has a lower payout ratio. Remember, a high yield isn't always a good thing, even though it may seem that way at first glance. Because a dividend is a percentage of the business's profits that the owners receive, the money that is already paid out in a dividend does not get reinvested back into the business. This means that if the payout is too high, it may actually look attractive, but it only means that management is choosing not to reinvest in the business for some reason. And if a company isn't reinvesting in itself, that only means it's not eyeing any kind of potential growth. While dividend stocks have a reputation for being generally safe and reliable, in order to avoid this high yield trap, don't base your investment decisions on a high yield alone. Companies that have a significantly higher yield than their competitors are almost always a red flag and not an opportunity to jump on. Determine the sustainability of the dividend through the payout ratios. The best way you can decide if your investment is in the right hands is to study the balance sheet of the company. This includes the debt, cash assets, and liabilities of the business. It's the only way you can really tell if the company is doing well, and by extension, how well your investment will perform. What are the best investment strategies for stock dividends? You can use a dividend reinvestment plan called DRIP to reinvest the dividends back into shares of the company. Set it and forget it. It's a passive way of investing if you don't have the time and energy to actively manage funds, which can be a huge boon to beginners trying to assemble a portfolio for the first time. Remember, while cash dividends may seem attractive at first, instant gratification isn't always a good thing. Dividends are a good sign that a company is financially healthy, and if you have a couple of good stock dividends from established companies, this can make your portfolio more stable. By the way, dividend stocks usually pay qualified dividends, which can be taxed anywhere from 0 to 20%. They're still relatively lower than the ordinary income tax rates of 10 to 39.6%. Strategies for buying and selling dividend stocks. A very simple and obvious one is to just pick a group of companies that pay high dividends. Just remember what I said previously. If they are paying high dividends, then they are not able to grow more in the future. These are often banks, telecommunication companies, and even mining companies. They pay high to keep the investors around. However, this can be risky because the company pays those high dividends, they feel pressured to keep paying out to the shareholders. This is called a dividend trap. This can be bad if the company can't sustain the high payouts and actually suffers if the payout of the dividend is actually something that they just can't afford. A way to avoid a dividend trap is to ensure that the business has low or no debt. Another way is to ensure that the company is consistently cash flow positive. Another way to invest in dividends is to buy with listed investment companies or LICs. These use the investor's money to construct a diversified portfolio around blue chip stocks from old and established companies. These are very safe, and many of the companies within the LIC will pay dividends themselves. A third way is to buy into dividend ETFs. I have another video about ETFs that you can find at the link below. But an ETF is basically a stock that invests in other stocks based on a particular industry. Of course, the ETF will have companies inside of it that pay those dividends. To be clear, an ETF is established to follow certain criteria like only tech, only NASDAQ, or only blue chips. By comparison, the LICs are more fluid in nature as they have asset managers behind the scenes maintaining and picking the stock portfolio. $1,000 per month from dividend stocks. The short answer is that based on 4 to 6% payouts, you would need to invest somewhere between $200,000 to $300,000 in the stock market. See how easy that was? But of course, you don't actually have that kind of money laying around. This is why it needs to become more of a retirement plan rather than a tomorrow plan. On the surface, you would need to invest about $800 a month into these stocks for the next 30 years. By itself, this doesn't make much sense, and you don't need to put in that much. Instead, if you invest what you can every month, then every time that you get paid dividends, you just put it right back into the stock market, buying more stock. So, while you're collecting dividends for the next 30 years, you're also using that money to buy more. If you have a self-managed IRA, you can put your tax-free money into dividend ETFs or LICs. Then, by the time that you retire, you will have all this extra money to fall back on. It's when you stop working that you really need this passive income. If you want to do it in 10 years, then you'll need to put in about $1,200 a month at a 6% return. If you want a 20-year goal, you will need to invest about $400 a month. Lastly, if you want a long-term 30-year goal, you will need to put in about $180 per month. What's interesting about it is the way that compounding interest works. Over 30 years, we would only be putting in about 34%. All the rest of the money generated comes out of our money continually making more and more money for itself. It's crazy. So be sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching.